Welcome to this week's episode of Success Through Connections, and I'm Zelda, your host. Don't forget, if you would like, I would love for you to subscribe and share this episode with your social media. Today, I have someone that I've been wanting to get on the show for a very long time. His name is Bob Burg, and I've known about him for a number of years, but I finally reached out to him and asked him to be on the show and was thrilled when he responded pretty quickly and said, absolutely. So I'm so happy he's here. And I want to tell you a little bit about Bob. So Bob has over 30 years successfully showing entrepreneurs and leaders and sales professionals how to build relationships and communicate their value to accelerate their business growth, which I think is phenomenal because sometimes we just don't know what our value is. He is the co-author of the book, The Go-Giver with John Mann, and that created a worldwide movement. The book has been translated into 30 different languages. It's sold over 1 million copies, and Inc. magazine named it number 10 most motivational books ever written. I mean, ever written? That's pretty freaking awesome. Now, I've read this book and it grabs you from the very beginning. It's like it just grabs you. He also has created a program where he helps speakers and coaches polish those skills. And we'll get into that as well. I'd love to hear more about that because I know a lot of our audience always ask me, how do you become a speaker? So I always say, sign up for a course. I don't know that his is the right one because I think he works with those who are already a little bit in that field, but I'll let him address that because don't want to turn business away. So Bob is also an advocate for and a defender of the free enterprise system. He believes that the amount of money one makes is directly proportionate to how many people you serve. I love that. And he's an unapologetic animal fanatic because he serves as part of South Florida's rescue, foster, and adoption organization. I know he has a cat, and it's probably right at his feet right now. So welcome to the show, Bob. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Hey, Zelda, thank you for that lovely introduction. That was so kind of you.
Well, I'm just thrilled that you're here today. And I really want to just dive right into your book, The Go-Giver, because when I started to read it and I read about, you know, you have to give before you get. And it talked about, well, how do you think a fire is going to start? A fire is not going to just magically start. You have to light a match. You have to give it some lighter fluid. You have to give it something to get something. So can you tell us a little bit about what's the premise of the book itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And The Go-Giver itself is a business parable. So it's a story, it's a work of fiction based on what we would like to think are proven principles of success, but it is a work. And John David Mann was my co-author. And really, he's the guy who made this hum. I mean, he is just a magnificent writer and storyteller. And so much of that success is owed to John. The premise is actually very simple. It's that shifting your focus, and I really think, Zelda, this is where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. Now, when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well, but not for any kind of way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical, type of reasons. Not at all. It's actually very rational. It's very logical. When you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and instead place it on serving others, discovering their needs, their wants, their desires, when you make it not about you, but instead about helping others solve their challenges and problems, right? When you make it not about yourself, but rather moving others closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you, right? They begin to like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to be part of your life. They want to do business with you. Sure, if that's when and if that's appropriate, but really they want to tell the world about you. They want to be your personal walking ambassador. And I know that you embody those very principles, and that's, really exactly what you teach.
Some people, are naturals at it. Others, not so much. They have to kind of learn how to do that. Is there a way that you can learn to be more of a giver?
Well, I mean, I think, like you say, there are some that kind of just naturally come by it. And some of them, their problem isn't with that, it's with the receiving part, which is why we, talk about that in law number 5, the law of receptivity. But a lot of times when people are not willing to focus on the value they provide others, it may be a natural part of their being, but usually it's more that's just what they've been taught about business. They've grown up with sort of maybe I'm dating myself here, but, with the J.R. Ewing character as the typical, that was in Dallas. The young kid, people listening to this have no idea probably who I'm talking about. But, he was take advantage of others and try to just, take and, whatever. And, that really, it is not in alignment with human nature because people are not going to, and this is, I think, very important. And I used to, when I was out speaking at sales conferences all the time, I used to begin often by saying, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money
Right,
or even
right.
just even because you're a nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. So when you think about it, it makes sense. And this is what we would just need to teach those people who don't understand this, right? And who are open to learning, to teach that the best thing you can do for yourself, the most self-interested thing you can do is place your self-interest to the side and
That's
understand that when you make it about the value you bring to others, that's how business is created.
exactly. So you mentioned a minute ago about you had these 5 laws. Can you tell us a little bit about what those 5 laws are? And I know that they help you both personally and professionally. So can you talk a little bit about those laws?
Yeah, so the 5 laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. And they work together in alignment harmoniously. The first one is the law of value, which says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, when you first hear this, it's a little counterintuitive. Give more in value than I take in payment. That sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy, right? And so give more in value than I take in payment. How am I supposed to survive in my business that way? Never mind thrive.
But
So
you
to
hear it all the
understand,
time. I hear it online all the time where people say give value. And so people, I think the people who struggle with that, and I know I used to struggle with that, was, oh, I'm giving them all my good stuff. I'm giving them all my tips. I'm giving them all this. So how do you break that mindset of I'm giving them to where you really are giving them? Because the more you give, it's true, the more you get back.
well, so I think the first thing that's important to really understand for people is the difference between price and value. It kind of begins there. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is. It's the price of a thing.
Mhm.
Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another human being that they will willingly, in this case, say, exchange their money for this and be glad they did, while you also make a very healthy profit. Now, a very quick example I'd like to share is the accountant who you hire to do your taxes, and she charges you, $1,000, let's say, to do your tax return. That's her fee, her price.
Yeah.
$1,000. But what value does she give you in exchange? Well, she saves you $5,000 in taxes that you wouldn't be able to do yourself, obviously. She provides you with, she saves you countless hours of time.
Yes.
And she provides you and your family with the security and peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. So she's given you well over $5,000 in value in exchange for $1,000 fee or price. She gave you more in value than she took in payment. So you feel great about it, right? Because
Uh,
you received a lot. But she also made a very healthy profit because
right.
it was worth it to her to exchange her time, her energy, her knowledge, her caring, her what have you for this $1,000. So you both ended up coming out of, in fact, in any free market based exchange. And when I say free market, I simply mean no one's forced to do business with anyone else. People do so on their own volition. In any free market-based exchange like this, there should always be, or there always is, two profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand.
That's very true. I know for me, when I think of people offering their value, or like on social media when they're giving their tips and you think they're giving it away, to me, it validates their knowledge and their skill sets, because I'll hire this person because they made these comments, they gave these tips, they gave this advice. So I know that they know what they're talking about. Then I'll hire them because I
Yeah.
know that they know.
Well, and I think there's a difference between knowing and being able to apply. And so what happens is when a person, gives value through, let's say, the content that they publish in this case, because I think that's what we're referring to, that whether it's videos, articles, combination, doing podcast, whatever it happens to be, giving lots of great value. And as you say, it's a way of building credibility with that person. But they say, well, it's those 5 tips that she gave; those were great. Okay, so I'm just going to do them. Except I really can't. I need someone to share with me how to. And it's not that the information's not great; it is. But there is a difference between knowing a thing and actually being able to do it without help.
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is perfect. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about mentorship. That's, to me, it's so important. So, I know that I've had different mentors,
Mhm.
different coaches. They have their different skills and all that.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's difficult sometimes to know the right one. It's kind of like hire slow, fire fast.
Mhm.
So, what is something that when you're looking for a mentor, what you should absolutely avoid when you're looking for that mentor?
Well, something to avoid. There's two things to avoid. One is, when you're looking for a mentor, you want it to be someone who is in alignment character-wise. So because obviously you're going to follow this person's advice and counsel and so forth. So you want it to be, they don't have to have the same personality type. They don't even have to have the same basic style, although that's fine too. But character is a big part of that. But when looking for a mentor, what happens a lot, I think people go about it in a way that can be counterproductive, because they'll find someone who they'd really like to have mentor them. And in this, by the way, it might be someone in person, or it might be on Zoom, or it might be phone, or whatever. However you meet this person, we're able to meet people and connect with people on so many different ways today. But they might say to this person, hey, I really need a mentor. Would you mentor me? And I'm talking about someone they don't have a relationship with
Uh,
first, right?
Okay.
And when that happens, it's usually very unappealing to that person who you want to have mentor you. Why? Because the chances are, first, if you want them to mentor you, many others do as well. And they only have, a finite amount of time that they can do that sort of thing. Also, just coming out and asking someone to mentor you means you're asking someone to basically, share 30 or 40 years of wisdom with you, even though they don't know you from a hole in the wall. And, that might give them concern just in terms of, well, who's this person to ask me, or why, what are they? But real, so it's like not respecting the process itself. It's almost being as though one's entitled to it. So, which doesn't mean that's how the person is. It's just how it could come across to that person. So, my suggestion is to approach it a little bit different. You can still ask that person, but what you do is maybe take it a little bit differently, and utilizing words such as, I know you are very busy. If this is something you either, don't have time to do, or for whatever reason would rather not, I'll absolutely understand. I'm wondering if I might ask you one or two very specific questions.
Mhm.
Ah, now you've come at it from a total different frame. Totally different frame. One, you've respected the process. You realize you're not entitled to their time. You
Right.
realize they may be too busy, and that's okay. Okay. The second thing is you gave them an out or back door.
Yes.
You let them know, you gave them that escape hatch so they don't feel like you're trying to pressure them or whatever.
Back them into the.
And that's powerful. And then the third thing is, rather than just ask them to mentor you, excuse me, which is open ended, could take a lot of their time. They don't know, again, they don't know who who you are and they don't, right? You've instead asked, may I ask you one or two very specific questions? Now what you've communicated is that, yes, I know what I want to ask. I'm not going to waste your time, right? And this person appreciates that, And so now, and you typically they'll say, sure, go ahead. How can I help you? Not always, but not everybody has to,
Right,
different
right.
people, and everybody has a right to do what is congruent with their value system. But now, so what you do is, you ask your couple of questions. Of course, research that person so thoroughly that you don't ask something that you could have found the answer to through, online or whatever. But you don't take up much of their time. You thank them profusely and let them know that you will, apply their information right away, their wisdom right away. May I touch base, or, may I get back with you from time to update you on my progress? And again, the whole way you're approaching this person is just loving this. And they'll say, yeah, of course, please. I want, now, once get off the phone, get off the Zoom or in person, whatever it happens to be, write a handwritten, personalized thank you note to this person. Very short and sweet. Dear Mr. or dear Ms. or dear Jane or dear Harry, however the relationship's been established. Thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule. Your wisdom is absolutely priceless, and I will apply it right away. We'll get back with you and, let you know how things are coming along. Again, many thanks. Best regards. Sign your name, put it in a regular envelope, put a hand stamp, not a meter machine stamp, hand stamp, send it to them that day. It will just really impress them, and it shows you're that type of person who is worth doing this with. Another really nice touch is you find out what their favorite charity is or favorite cause or whatever, and you can do that either online. You can call their administrative assistant, whatever it happens to be. Make a small, it doesn't have to be big, just make a small donation in their name.
Yeah.
It'll get back to them. You're not doing it to kiss up or anything, but simply to, again, communicate that you respect the process. You're very grateful. This is not something you take advantage, that you take for granted. Excuse me. Now, couple weeks later, few weeks later, you might follow up again, ask a couple more questions. If there's supposed to be a mentor protege relationship ongoing that develops, it will. It may not. You'll meet other people and you'll do the same thing. And what you'll find is as you go along in your career, making these great connections, you'll also find other people who you can ask who they would suggest or could they introduce you. And again, it's going through what you teach. It's building relationships with people, based on an attitude of giving value to others and always looking to how you can benefit another person. And as you do that, you never have to worry about not knowing a thing because you'll always have people you can ask.
Yes. I'm a big advocate, and I stress it in all of my talks about those handwritten notes and
Yeah.
birthday cards and all kinds of things like this. I'm a big proponent of handwritten notes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's because who doesn't want to get
It
something like that?
distinguishes you from everyone else, basically.
It's awesome. So if you're looking for a mentor, what's the best way to even find one if you don't even know? Let's say it's a new business, a new business owner or a new person in sales or what have you, and they're just looking for that mentor. Where do they find a mentor? Because not everybody's a mentor.
Oh no, but you can always, you can ask other people. You can ask your associates. You can ask who they know, who they would suggest. You can look online. You can, it's so easy to search and find, people.
Are there questions that you should, if you find this person or persons that you think you would like to consider as a mentor, are there some specific questions, like top 3 questions you should ask them right off the bat?
I'm not sure if there's that as much as what you're really looking for, depending upon your unique situation, is you're probably looking for the principles that will cause you to be successful in that particular area, whatever it is that
Yeah.
you're looking to do. And if it, it's if you're looking to understand the principles and you understand the principles of success, the individual strategies usually come as a result of that.
Yeah. So, well, one of the principles in your book is about influence. So, how does the go-giver create influence both personally and professionally?
Well, you look at what influence really is. And again, we go back to defining terms, right? And on a very basic level, influence can be defined as simply as the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. Now, that's the definition, but it's not necessarily as John David Mann calls it, the substance of influence or the essence of influence, at least not what we call genuine influence. So, genuine influence is really the essence of influence is pull as opposed to push. As in, the old question, how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not very well, I guess you could far, but not very fast or very effectively, which is why, great influencers, genuine influencers don't push. You never hear people say, wow, that Tom or that Jeanette, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, she's influential. She has a lot of pull with people, right?
Yeah.
It's an attraction. Great influencers, genuine influencers attract people first to themselves and only then to their ideas. So, to answer the question, how do you do that? You do that through your focus on others. We would say that, you need to be internally motivated, but outwardly focused. So the genuine influencer is always asking themselves questions such as, how does what I'm asking this other person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their needs, their wants, their desires? How does what I'm asking, how does what I want this other person to do, how does it solve a problem for them? How does it, again, move them closer to happiness? How does it help them accomplish what they want? Now, when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully and intelligently, genuinely, authentically, all right, not as a way to manipulate another person into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment, which is pull, as opposed to trying to depend on some type of compliance, which is push. One of my great mentors, her name is Dondi Scumaci. She's just a brilliant and lovely human being. And she speaks for companies and teams all over the world. And she says, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to influence, she says, compliance will never take you where commitment can go.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's really key to focus on that pull, earning the commitment of those you're looking to lead and influence.
So, going along those lines, I know that in the Go Giver, when you think of giving and giving value and giving, can you be taken advantage of by being the giver? And to tie into that, I was reading recently about, well, you wrote about receiving. Recently, you wrote about receiving and celebrating our successes and why we struggle with receiving.
Yeah.
It's like when somebody gives you, you go, no, thank you. Or why do we feel so uncomfortable with receiving? Because I think givers feel that they are uncomfortable receiving. That wasn't really where I was going with this question, but it's kind of where I just went with it. So let's take that piece of it first of
Okay.
what, because I know you wrote recently, you have this newsletter you send out on Wednesdays.
Yeah,
I
the
read
daily
those
impact.
newsletters.
No, I send them 5 days a week.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
I see
yeah.
them all the time, and
Monday,
I saw
Sunday
one
mornings.
recently that said
Yeah.
Wednesday. So
Yeah.
it was this week that I received it, and it was talking about receiving. And so, why do we struggle with receiving?
Well, because the world around us gives us horrible anti-prosperity messages. You see it everywhere, and really it's a combination for most people of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies. I mean, look at how, when people have a lot of money, people will often say, "Oh, I wonder what they had to do to get that."
Ah,
They rarely say, "I wonder how many people they had to serve."
better question.
Exactly. Okay.
Right.
My friend Randy Gage, who I mentioned in that article, and he's one of the world's foremost
Oh,
authorities on prosperity and abundance thinking. He does this whole beautiful vignette where it takes about 10 minutes, so I won't do it here. But the gist is, if you watch any box office smash movie, there's usually two types of people who are portrayed. Okay. And you'll notice this in every one after this. There are the good people who are typically portrayed as being poor, honest, and even happy, right? But they're always being taken advantage of, picked on, pushed around, pushed down, stepped on, stepped over by who? The evil rich people who are greedy and horrible, and the business people and the, evil, right? Again, the J.R. Ewing character we were talking about before. Well, people grow up with that, and that's what they take in. And again, it's unconscious, right? You're not really thinking. He gives a great example from the first Spider-Man movie where Peter Parker is sitting on the couch with Uncle Ben, and they're talking about, being poor. And Uncle Ben says to Peter, he says, "Well, Peter, we may not be rich, but at least we're honest." What a horrible message for some young teenage boy or teenage girl to hear, right? Because what's the underlying premise in that statement? Well, if you're honest, you have no chance, pal, of ever making it, as far as having a comfortable, wealthy, prosperous life. But if you are prosperous, you must have done something really bad to get there. Now, again, is it that just a movie? Well, no, it's pretty much every movie, and it's the general anti-prosperity culture in which we live. So, and again, it's unconscious. We take that in and we don't think about it, but that makes it so that we will sabotage, being receptive. So first, it's understanding that this is a thing, which most people, we go through our lives not understanding this. And then once we do, now it's a matter of making a study of prosperity, which why I mentioned, studying people like Randy and David Nagel and Sharon Lechter and, Lisa Peterson and just so many great teachers of, prosperity.
I met Randy Gage years ago when I was in the Speakers Association in South Florida, and he was there all the time. I read his weekly newsletter.
Oh,
I hope
amazing.
someday that, hey, if anybody has a connection out there, I'd love to get him on the podcast.
Oh, yeah,
He,
absolutely.
he is,
We'll
he's
write to me
awesome.
afterwards and I'll
Oh, I
make.
would love to. I mean, I read his stuff and love it, and I send it to my children all the time. In fact, there was one recently that tied into what you were talking about, the receiving and can you be taken advantage of if you're the giver. And he said, and I wrote it down. He wrote, and this was this week, or last Friday, he wrote, either you're using leverage or someone is using you for leverage. And I thought about that statement. I thought, well, that's a pretty true statement, don't you think?
Yeah, so Randy was talking about that in terms of society and
Yes.
how, and he was talking about the kind of the societal engines that kind of rule over people. If you think of the Matrix, right? In that movie, remember the Matrix, only instead of machines, it's basically, it's everything you hear, media and big business and this and that and this and that. Individually, no, but as an entity, they all have their own, and there's nothing conspiratorial about it or anything like that, but they have their own agendas. And so his thing is about being careful of this. Now, when you ask earlier, as a go-giver, can you be taken advantage of? First, please understand that this is so important. There is nothing about being a go-giver that is congruent with being taken advantage of. Okay, so being a go-giver simply means you understand that by focusing on providing value to others, you create the benevolent context for your success. And it's the rising tide that, that raises all boats. But can you be taken advantage? Anybody can be taken advantage of. But and I often say that if one finds themselves in a pattern of being taken advantage of, I don't mean every so often. I mean, life is life. Unless you stay in the house and don't talk to anybody, you're going to be at some point taken advantage of. But I'm talking about someone who this constantly happens to. Okay, it's not because you're a nice person, and it's not because you're a giver. It's because you're doing things in a certain way that creates the environment for you
Mm.
to be taken advantage of. And again, it's very unconscious. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, "Hey, I wonder if I can find someone to take advantage of me today." But there's typically a reason. Again, unconscious has to do with an anti-prosperity unconsciousness, which is okay because if you recognize it in yourself, you're in a position to do something about it.
Right.
But
Right.
it's recognizing the patterns, asking yourself why, and then going about, finding the people who can help you get past that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yes, yes. Well, we are definitely out of time. So I want to ask you my signature question that I ask every single guest that I have. And that one is, can you share a story of a time when you were presented an opportunity because of a connection that you had, or you were able to, because of a connection you had, help someone else with an opportunity?
Well, one that comes to mind, and this is somewhat early in my speaking career, and I was a member of the National Speakers Association, and we were talking about the Florida chapter earlier. There was a gentleman who I had met there. He and his wife, two daughters, used to come to every convention, and I met them at the first couple. Just lovely, wonderful people. And I remember when I first started as a way of positioning myself as a speaker, and this is before the internet became so prolific, I used to write a lot of magazine articles, regular magazine articles.
Yeah.
And so I would often let the editor know that, I had other, other speakers, friends who could write articles too, and they were always open to that. But this one person I used to recommend almost all the time because he had this great story that could pretty much apply to any, any magazine, any audience. So this took place over a couple of years. I was doing that. And then there had been a company I was trying to get in with to speak to. And not only could I not get in the front door, I couldn't even locate the front door. And I remember speaking with someone about it, another speaker, and we were just talking, and he said, "Well, oh, don't you know so and so, the person who I was often referring to?" And I said, "Oh yeah, great guy, love him and his family." And he said, "Well, that they're a client of his." I said, "Oh, I didn't know that." So I called him and I said, "Listen, I want to ask you a question." I said, "I'm not asking you for a referral in there. This is your client, but I'm just wondering, how would you even approach?" If you were me, finding that, and before I could even finish, he said, "Nonsense. I'll have my contact call you." The person called me later that day, and I ended up not only speaking for that particular group, but nationwide for that company over the
Wow.
course of a few years. It was a very lucrative client. And only as a result, that relationship was a matter of, just looking for ways to give value to my friend. That's
That
it.
is a great story, Bob. Great story. So, Bob, if someone wants to reach out and connect with you, how can they find you?
The best place to go is burg.com, and everything's pretty much there.
Burg.com. That's your
Hmm.
website?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's easy enough to
Yeah.
remember. Burg.com, and you'll get Bob Burg in person. So that's our show for today. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share the show. And every week we have a new episode. Every Tuesday, a new one comes out. So also remember that success does not happen in isolation. It happens because of the connections that we have. So keep reaching out and keep connecting. This is Zelda. Until next week. Talk to you then.